Do not be too eager to deal out death and judgment. Even the very wise cannot see all ends.
What's up, everybody? Tim Anderson here, aka Renfill, the bearded dwarven princess. Welcome back for another Rings of Power rant/discussion. And today we're diving into the idea that Peter Jackson's characterization issues are going to be solved by the Rings of Power because Peter Jackson's films got so many things wrong, and Amazon's going to fix that. And I'm finally going to feel like I have a character that represents me in the new show. So many problems with that. We're going to dive into that today. But before we do, if this is your first time here and you're like, who are you? Who's Renfell, the bearded dwarven princess? All that good stuff. Well, you'll find out. You're about to find out. And we're gonna dive in today in today's episode. And if you like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you get updates about the Rings of Power and beyond in future episodes. Don't forget to check out all the other playlists here on YouTube. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so in a variety of ways. You can join the channel as a member by clicking that join button down there. You can also drop a super thanks on any video that you watch that you think is appropriate. And of course, you can also head over to the Patreon page, patreon.com/wandering hermits, which is all about that world, which we'll talk about later at the end of the video. But in the meantime, let's get into today's topic, the idea that Peter Jackson's films had characterization issues. This is something that boggles my mind. Peter Jackson's films, and we're talking the Lord of the Rings films here. I'm not talking The Hobbit. If you want to discuss The Hobbit, you want to debate The Hobbit, go off to another video because that's not what we're here about. We're here about the Lord of the Rings films that Peter Jackson did. And those films are universally loved, universally acclaimed, and have won just oodles and oodles and oodles of awards, launched the film careers of pretty much everyone in that franchise who didn't already have a career prior to that, and have just basically set the standard for what a fantasy film should be. And they were crafted with a great amount of attention to detail and a lot of passion for the source material. Now, there are absolutely variations in those films. It's an adaptation, and variations are things that we can come to expect from any sort of adaptation. And I know people who are supporters of Rings of Power are going to jump in right now and say, but Renfell, aren't you saying that by that same token that Amazon's changes are going to be accepted as well? Maybe, could be, depending on why those changes are being made. Because with Peter Jackson, he very much came out and said early on, I don't have the quote in front of me, but something in the effect that we're doing things very much in the spirit of Tolkien and we're not injecting our own politics into it. Whereas Amazon very clearly came out and said from the very get go, there are issues with Tolkien's work. There are some problematic components, and we're going to be fixing those with the current iteration. We're going to be gender swapping some characters. We're going to be solving the lack of representation by adding in black dwarves and black elves. We're going to be, bringing modernized viewpoints to Lord of the Rings, which it's an Anglo-Saxon tale. It doesn't need that sort of stuff, but I digress. We're talking about Peter Jackson's films here. Um, that being said, Peter Jackson did make some changes to some of the characters. And I've seen some comments in YouTube videos that, Elrond, this, that, and the other, Gandalf, this, that, and the other. Sure, fair enough. But one of the things I would argue that Peter Jackson never did was misrepresent any of the characters from the Lord of the Rings with some sort of political narrative or some sort of woke agenda as to what that character should or shouldn't be. Keep in mind that Ian McKellen is out and proud for decades. He is a very gay man, a very beautiful, sexy, older gay man now these days, but he is a great actor and out and proud for many, many, many years. And he brought gravitas to the role of Gandalf. It didn't matter that he was gay or not gay. An actor should be able to portray any role that they want. But the idea that I saw one of the super fans from the UK superfan video. This is months ago now, but I'm going to bring it up for a reference point where they were watching the initial trailer, and they're giving their reactions, and one of them was like, I'm finally going to be able to have the representation that I've always needed. I've never seen someone like me represented in a show before. And I have to say, if you never watched like Sense 8 or, any of these other shows that have amazing gay and trans representation, like it kind of feels like you're not actually seeing those shows and you don't actually know what you're talking about. So with Peter Jackson's films, I think the the representation that we're getting is versions of those characters. And I know some people have taken offense to those because I did see and I covered this in my most recent Rings of Power video, the trip that all these super fans went and took in Oxford and London and got to go see the premiere. And one of the things mentioned on the OneRings.net article that was published about that was like several, many of the characterization issues from previous iterations, it looks like those have been fixed in the current show and in the Rings of Power show. And I'm like, I remember scratching my head asking in the video that I did, what characterization issues are you talking about? Because I don't remember any from the Peter Jackson films. I remember watching those films and loving the way all of the characters were portrayed. I loved the way they portrayed Aragorn. I thought that Viggo Mortensen brought amazing charisma to that role. I thought that Gimli was the right amount of humor. And people are like, well, Gimli wasn't that funny in the books. Read the books. Read the books again. Dwarves are quite funny. Gandalf has quite a bit of wit, as do the dwarves, as does Bilbo and the other hobbits. Like, there's quite a bit of humor sprinkled throughout the text from those characters. I was just reading recently for my Mondays in Middle Earth series, and I kind of chuckled. There's the point when they're Walls of Moria and they're trying to open it, and Gandalf can't remember the opening phrase, and he gets irritated and he throws his staff down and has a temper tantrum, and he's like, rah, and he just sits down in grumpy silence because he can't get the door open. Like, there's plenty of humor in those books if you look for it. So I'm not quite sure what people are talking about when they're talking about misrepresentation in Peter Jackson's films, unless they're simply because here's what I've seen. What I have seen crop up is lots and lots of comments about how, well, there's no black elves in Peter Jackson's films. There's no black dwarfs. There's no black people. There's no colored people. There's no homosexual people. There's no representation in Peter Jackson's films. That's the complaint I've seen from the people who are out there complaining. For the most part, there have been a handful of people here and there who just didn't like the versions of the characters that were portrayed on screen. And that's fair. That's absolutely fair to criticize the version of a character that an actor chooses to portray or that a director chooses to have portrayed on film. Um, you might not like the way Aragorn was done, or the way Gandalf was done, or the way Gimli was done because too much humor, not enough, whatever. I didn't like his accent. He was too short. These are legitimate critiques that you can bring to the table, but that's not necessarily, in my mind, characterization. Characterization would be the portrayal of that character and not necessarily the looks of that character. I'm just spitballing here. What I have heard, the voices that are loudest are the ones who claim that there wasn't any representation of their lifestyle portrayed in the Peter Jackson adaptations. And that's why they're so excited about the Rings of Power, because these woke super fans are out there saying, oh, I'm finally going to be able to be represented on screen. You've been represented on screen in hundreds, if not thousands, of other productions around the world in television and film. You don't mess with the mythology of a certain chickens. I could say something about chickens, I won't. Now I'm paused. The idea that, as an example, we've talked about the Black Panther, you can't have a white Black Panther. Going back to the Norseman reference that we made recently as well, the Norseman, the Northman is a very much a white Anglo-Saxon mythology movie. And that's not to say it's all about white power, because there have don't take that out of context, by the way, internet. The whole video is here for you to see that I'm saying that that movie was not about that. But there are people who are trying to claim it. There are people who are neo-Nazis out there who are trying to claim the Northman as some sort of a white power film. That's not what it's about. It's simply a mythology film that's about the northern regions of the world, the Viking culture where it was all white people. Similarly to when we see the Black Panther, mythology, that's all African mythology. Similarly, when we see something from the bush tribes in Australia, indigenous cultures portrayed in film, those should not be messed with. So I'm at a loss. I would love to know what characterization issues people seem to have with Peter Jackson's films and how they think that the Rings of Power is going to solve that, because I don't see it. I don't get it. I don't understand what you're on about. Drop your thoughts down in the comments below. Please help me to understand what representation issues you seem to think that the Peter Jackson films have when it comes to portraying the races of the world. Elves, dwarves, orcs, goblins, men, halfling. I thought all of those were very well done. I love the Peter Jackson films. Yes, there are quirks. Um, it always made me laugh, but one of the things I don't necessarily, on a personal level, one of the things I don't like is, and you got to remember too that Peter Jackson was under pressure from the producers to do certain things. And remember, he and Fran and why am I blanking on her name? The other woman who helped them write the films, their other writing partner. They had to rewrite those films day after day after day, time after time after time, multiple times to get through multiple studio pitches to get to the point where they could get a studio to back them. But even then, the people who are making the film, producing the film, giving you the money to make them, are going to have demands. They're going to trust your vision for the most part, but they're still going to have little things they want. And one of those things, for example, was they wanted there to be a romance between Arwen and Aragorn, because they wanted to have a romantic plot line in there, or otherwise they were afraid it wouldn't sell tickets. That's a fair criticism. It's absolutely a fair criticism to want some sort of, romantic representation in there. And yet people are gonna be like, yeah, but there could have been two gay elves or two gay dwarves or whatever. There very much could have been if they were in the source material, but they weren't in the source material. So they took the characters that were in the source material, who already had an existing romantic relationship, and they just sort of made that a little more prominent in the films than it was in the books. And that's an adaptation aspect. Did I care for all of that? Not necessarily, but it worked in the end of the day. I cry every time I watch The Return of the King and Elrond is there presenting Arwen, after she was on her way to the Grey Havens and then turned around because she had a vision of a child that she might have with Aragorn, or that she would have with Aragorn. And Elrond is like, that future, yes, but I don't want you to suffer that future, because you'll waste away and very slowly languish and die well long after Aragorn's been. I don't want you to suffer. I want you to go live this happy life in the lands beyond. That's very much created for the film for the most part. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, because it took things from the book and just expanded upon that. Not so with Rings of Power, where we're creating characters from scratch and claiming we're going to write the novel that Tolkien never wrote. Nah, that's where I draw the line in terms of character representation. You're now creating your own characters and having those characters represent the things that you want them to represent, when those characters actually never existed in the first place. So that's what I love about Peter Jackson's films, is we had existing characters that made their way into the book. And I'm, again, not talking The Hobbit with the elf chick. That's another topic for another day. I don't want to get off on that, because it's a separate film series from the actual Lord of the Rings films. In which case, I felt the representation was spot on. I loved all of them. Aragorn was perfect. Gimli, perfect. Legolas representation, I loved what Orlando Bloom did with it, but the things I didn't like were like sliding on the shield down the stairs at Helm's Deep. Not a big fan of that. Or when he is like jumping up on the Oliphant and then slides down as it's dying, and then like the trunk, and he goes up in the air and comes down. Like, come on, like those kind of things I didn't really care for, but that's Hollywood flair. I can ignore that in favor of, the actual character. It's similar in the Rings of Power video. I made fun of the teaser trailer when the elf um, does the whole, I'm going to pull the arrow out of the air and flip around and shoot it back. Like I looked at that and went, stupid. Like those are the types of things that I'm just gonna laugh at because I think it's ridiculous and it makes it. I don't care for those types of things. It's not to me that doesn't show me a representation of a character. That just shows me some cool special effects or fun combat sequences. And mm, if I want fun combat, I can always go watch the Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Darth Maul Jedi lightsaber duel in Phantom Menace because that is so good. Or when Aragorn kills, I forget the name of the Urukai he kills at the end of the Fellowship film, and he just John, and cuts his head off, like, and then he pulls himself. Like Lurtz was his character name, I think, and he pulls himself on the sword. Like, it's just good stuff. Anyway, love to hear your thoughts. I kind of rambled a little longer than I thought I would today. Down below is where you can leave your comments. Don't forget, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to get updates for all the future content that I produce here. And don't forget, you can join as a member. There's a button down there for the Adventurers Guild. You can also throw a super thanks on any of my past videos as a way to support the channel and my ongoing adventure towards full-time content creation. And if you want to go above and beyond and you like all things fantastical, you can check out the Wandering Hermits Patreon page for the world map behind me. That's the world of Weave in the Void, being produced by my brother and I, along with my wife, and Nathan Napalm's helping us with art. It is a 5th edition tabletop setting. Books are out June 1st. There's also a novel. The series being produced through Patreon a couple times a month is when the chapters come out. And there's a point-and-click adventure game, a lot like the old King's Quest and Quest for Glory games, if you like that kind of stuff. You can download the free demo over at the Patreon page, pick up a sub over there, pre-order all the things, and hopefully we will see everybody in Discord and beyond. Don't forget I stream almost every single day, so check those out. We play World of Warcraft Classic, we play Lord of the Rings Online, we play EverQuest, old P99 EverQuest, EverQuest 2. We play lots of MMORPGs and other stuff, so hopefully we'll see you beyond just these Rings of Power videos. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, happy reading, and looking forward to the healthy discussion around this topic. Until next time.